Hello and welcome back to Conquering the JavaScript Interview, the Array Architects series, mini-series, whatever. Today we're going to be diving into the join method, an elegant way to merge array elements into a single string. So if you're curious about weaving array elements together with custom separators, then you are in the right video. We're going to write our own version of it today. But before we uncover the power of join, I like to remind y'all to check the description down below for a link to our community membership. For $25 a month, you get access to not only our Discord, where you get to join the coding community of other people on the same journey as you. You get to ask me for help along with my Covalence staff members, as well as for custom video content for YouTube or for whatever you're working on if it's related to our tech stack. You also get access, more importantly, to our courses, meaning our front and back end courses. When you combine them together, you get our full stack program. And I have a standalone React course that I have as well that takes you from zero to hero that I'm constantly updating. I'm also in the process of making a few other courses as well that will just become part of your package for no additional charge. So whenever I put those courses out or new content out, you get them for free. So again, check the description down below for a link to that. Otherwise, like I said, let's jump on in into join. I'm not editing that out. So we're gonna remind ourselves that join has been around since I think ECMAScript 1 back in 1997. I've had a recent string of these videos in this playlist, this little Array Architects sub-playlist on my Conquering the Interview playlist. A lot of the most recent ones have been, I was unaware that a lot of these recent methods I've covered have been around since the early days. They are like bread and butter tools. And I will say that my coworker Andrew and I, when we code golf or do anything goofy solution-wise, we heavily utilize the join method and its kind of corollary, the string split method, which maybe I'll make a separate video on. They are incredible tools, reliable players in that JS playbook, that JS toolkit, if you will. We're going to be, this is how we can join, or not join, yeah, we can join arrays and strings together in harmony with this method indeed. So the usage of the join method is going to be for converting arrays into strings. That gives us some flexibility in how to define array elements are separated in the resulting string. What I meant, so we have the ability to determine how the array elements are smushed together with things between them, with things not in between them. It doesn't matter. It's up to you, but there are some specifications on join that we're going to have to take into account when we actually begin coding it here in just a moment. So again, to remind ourselves, we're going to take each array element, we're going to specify a separator. If none is provided, we're going to be defaulting to a comma, which I'm fairly sure, because I was poking around the MDN not long before this video, that is the default separator if you do not provide one. Then it's going to take each element and concatenate the elements into a string. It's going to insert that separator in between each element. Then we're going to return the resulting string. There is some nuance and caveats to this, however. If an element is undefined or null, it will be treated as an empty string, which is also a kind of a con of join if you're not careful. So, from the previous video, I think we did concat. It combines arrays. Join is meant about transforming arrays into strings. The separator can be a string itself, as simple as a comma, or as complex as multiple characters. It doesn't matter, so we're going to have to take that into account in our solution. So, as always, you can grab this prompt and even the final code from the CODEPEN in the description of this video if you just want to look at it and follow along and understand it. I do suggest you try writing it on your own, as you'd be surprised. Even writing some code with your own fingertips, if you don't fully understand it, at least you build up some muscle memory coding syntax and understanding these things from your own perspective before you just copy and paste it on over. So let's go ahead and get going on how to code this sucker. So as always, I do say we're going to be adding a new method to the array object. Now, this is something you do in interviews and to flex your knowledge, and not something you actually do on a code base. This would pollute the prototypes or the methods on the array object, which can be confusing for newer developers joining your team. We're going to call this the custom join method. We're going to be assigning it a value of a function, something we can invoke. And what it's going to do is it's going to take a single argument, in this case called our separator, I think is how it's spelled. Who cares? The separator, that sounds right. So our separator here is going to use a default argument, meaning if one is not provided, it should default to a comma, no spaces around it there. I'm pretty sure is how join it works on its own. Then what we're going to do is we have to concatenate all this into a string and return that string. And that sounds like a great, my goodness, my fingers are off, home key, something that anyone that's been watching this series for a while is very not unfamiliar with me doing, where my keyboard is shifted from doing something else, like a gaming, like some gaming stance I have or whatever, where like my keyboard shifts and my home keys shift, and you see me typing really weirdly on these videos. But you know what? Y'all are used to that. So we're going to start with an empty string as our result string we're going to be returning, and we'll go ahead and just write out our return result right here as well. That way, if we already invoke this on an empty array, we should get back an empty string, which is one of the tests we should probably be accounting for. So there you go. Hard part's over, right? Nah, easy part's over. Now, as with most of these, we're going to go ahead and loop through. Again, ignore the errors behind me. This is just because I have a syntax error here, and I default to autosave normally, and I forget to turn it off for these videos. There we go. We are going to start looping through the first element, which is going to be represented by I equals 0, our iterator, our assignment 0. We're going to be looping through this .length. Remember, this is the keyword of JavaScript that gets its thing's context from the furthest thing to the left, which will be the array variable or array directly we're running custom join on. So it's going to represent the array. And we're going to iterate through each element of the array one by one, or each index of the array one by one. Now, as long as we have elements to add, we need to take our result and add the separator. So we don't need to add the separator on the very first iteration of this whole thing. So we're going to say if I is greater than 0, so that means anything after the first iteration, we are going to take our current resulting string and simply concatenate the separator on it. This means it should add the separator from everything after the first element, aka index 0. And we're not going to have to worry about a final or extra separator at the end, because the loop will terminate before it actually gets that far, which means we don't have to have some additional scenario to account for it. So far, not too bad. This is just a shorthand here. I'm doing a one-line return where I have result. I forgot to copy and paste, so I just copy and pasted the prompt there. Whoopsie. I'm doing a little one-line ES6 syntax where if there's one line of code after an if statement, you can just place it there as well. Notice there's no return early keyword here or break loop or something like that. We are indeed just having this condition run as well as another line of code here in just a moment. So there's no additional keyword telling the loop it has to stop if it's this kind of condition or something like that. We only want this condition to skip the first iteration and then do so for the rest. So that's what we're going to be doing there for that. Then what's going to have to happen is we're going to take our result and we're going to concatenate each element. We're going to have to concatenate each element of the array onto the result after each separator. So the very first iteration will skip this if statement and will simply concatenate the first element of the array to the result as a string. Then the second and onward iteration, it will add the separator and then concatenate the element. Add the separator, concatenate the element until it gets to the end, where this will then quit out, and there's no additional separator or element, or there's no additional separator at the very end here. So just by this right here, we've technically solved the prompt for today's video, which is, code your own join method. But we did mention at the beginning of the video that we should probably account for the null and undefined cases where they are treated as empty strings, because we don't want this thing converting those things to strings and making this look like ugly or nasty or something like that. So let's go ahead and try and code that expected behavior. So what we're going to actually do is we're going to write a ternary operation right here, where I'm going to say, hey, if the element we are looking at right now is null, right? I want to return the following, an empty string, otherwise add the element. And remember, I said this is the case for null or undefined, so I'm going to say, or if the element we're currently looking at in the array is an undefined element, whether it's null or undefined, we're going to concatenate an empty string, otherwise concatenate the element itself. So this ternary operator will allow us to run this operation and return something. This is not a short circuit, it's different. And it's going to return that element or an empty string. And this is actually going to fit more closely to the specifications that join is written with. And that should be about it right there. So yeah, Code itself, as always, not too bad for some of these array methods. And again, I feel like it's cool to understand them here. So let's go ahead and give this one a whirl. So we're going to take this input array, console log the input array, run a custom join on it. The custom join that the prompt has is a comma and a space. So we're going to do comma space. So we should basically see the array concatenated together as a string exactly as we see it right there in the output, or the input rather. And yeah, notice there are no square brackets around my output. There is no color difference here in my VS Code and Commander terminal, which is what I use. Strings are of this color right here. So if I console log, for example, just a number, notice it's a different color. That number 2 is a different color than the string value up here, which is the concatenated custom join. So it looks like it indeed join that array of those numbers, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, nothing's missing, that's a combination of my luggage, is concatenated all to a string with commas in between. Let's go ahead and grab the next one. This is a sentence with a separator of simply a space. So I'm going to go paste that down yonder. I'm going to custom join this sucker with a empty a string with a space inside of it, which means this should concatenate it to an actual sentence with spaces in between each word. Beautiful stuff right there. The next one I think is actually testing a more fun condition, which is can it take one string without separators? And if we pass in an empty string, can it handle that? There's no goofiness going on with some kind of condition thinking an empty string is falsy or something like that. A little nuance or catch to JavaScript. Remember, empty strings are falsy. We don't have any kind of condition checking for empty strings, thankfully. And yeah, one string without separators is exactly what we expected to see right there. And then finally, this one down yonder was back to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And it looks like it asks us to do a hyphenated space hyphen space in between each number. Nice looking output right there. I love what I see. What happens if we provide no argument? We didn't test that case yet. It indeed just slaps everything together with a comma in between. And that about rounds it out for our custom join implementation. I will say, if you do any kind of CSV creation, you probably have used this or seen it used before. It is a great tool along with the string split method to manipulate string values. Like one of my very first videos that I ever made for Conquering the JavaScript interview was how to reverse a string using split and join to split, reverse, join, and boom, you got it. So yeah, that was a long time ago when I made that. I think beginning of this year. But yeah, that's a classic string reversal solution, and we kind of broke it down step by step across all these videos here. So in terms of like readability, or you can kind of think of it as almost like JSON stringifying, it's going to follow a similar process with more rules and syntax. But this is great for, like I was saying, CSV creation or things in the URL. The URL slugs, there we go. URL slugs, like making SEO-friendly URL slugs from an array of strings using hyphens as separators. That's great stuff right there. Because we're looping through an array, and the array could be however big, I don't know, it could be a massive array. Performance for very large arrays or complex separators could be kind of an issue here, something to keep in mind. And again, knowing that it treats null and undefined elements or empty elements as empty strings, which can lead to some unexpected results if you're not careful. So your separator choice, depending on how simple or complex it could be, is what could really crank up or down the performance of this particular implementation or this method in general. So as always, I'd like to thank y'all for joining in this string stitching journey through Join. We're going to continue to unravel these JavaScript array methods until I get bored of this little mini series here, or until I don't get any more requests from Discord or something like that. So hopefully it's empowered your know-how of how this stuff works, and you can use it better in the future if you know how to implement it on your own, or at least a simple version on your own. So if you enjoy this walkthrough, please do all the YouTube stuff. Click subscribe, click the bell, like this video, leave a comment, give it a thumbs up, all that kind of fun stuff. And just stay tuned for more coding know-how coming your way. So until then, keep coding. And yeah, that's it. Keep coding.